is a massive opportunity to spread peace, prosperity, democracy.
Our military mission in Libya has been to protect civilians and establish a no-fly zone.
The strategy of taking out terrorists who threaten us while supporting partners on the front lines.
But now that we're going to see military intervention in Syria and Iraq, then there will be a blowback in Europe.
The prospect of massive immigration has always been Europe's worst nightmare.
There's absolutely going to be, unfortunately, a refugee crisis.
And the biggest wave of refugees may still be out there.
I don't think there is an answer that can be achieved simply by taking more and more refugees.
The Schengen Treaty is under threat. This is absolutely clear.
If we don't succeed in fairly distributing refugees, then of course the Schengen question will be on the agenda for many.
We set up a physical barrier.
We would like to go back to the old border control.
Moral human thing is to make clear, please don't come.
Heartbreaking image of a child's body embodies the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding right now in Europe. Warning, the photo we're going to show you is very graphic. It's of a 3-year-old Syrian boy who drowned during a desperate attempt to reach Greece with his family. His body washed ashore in Turkey. A lot of people are calling that picture a turning point. Migrants in Hungary are protesting their treatment this morning after they were ordered off a train. One family lay down on the train tracks.
And earlier, hundreds flooded into a major train station in Budapest this morning when police stepped aside. They piled into the trains, hoping to reach Western Europe. Charlie Daggett is on one of the first trains to leave the station. Charlie, good morning.
Good morning. We're on one of the first trains headed out of Budapest this morning with migrants on board. The train has now come to a stop just about 20 minutes outside of Budapest, and the police are now going through. It started this morning when police stepped aside and opened the gates to the station, and migrants went flooding in, packing onto the platforms and jumping onto trains anywhere that they could. They weren't sure where they were going. They're hoping to get to destinations away from Hungary, Germany, and Austria. All we were told is there were no international trains leaving, but migrants could get on board trains that were going to destinations within Hungary, and that's what these people are doing. Now, some of the Hungarians, it appears, are getting off the trains, as the officers have told them to do. The migrants remain on the train. Now, where it's going and what's going to happen to the migrants remains to be seen. Anthony?
All right, Charlie Daggett near Budapest, Hungary. Thank you, Charlie.
I would like to talk to you about immigration, but not just any immigration, in particular Islamic immigration. And the reason that we need to discuss Islamic immigration as separate from all other forms is this. All Islamic immigration has a hidden political agenda. We see this in the very calendar that Islam uses. Islamic calendar does not begin with the revelation of the Quran, nor the birth of Muhammad. Instead, Islamic calendar begins when Muhammad migrated from Mecca to Medina. Well, why pick this date out? Because it was the beginning of the success of Islam. It marked the beginning of political Islam. Because you see, Muhammad preached the religion of Islam for 13 years in Mecca, and persuaded only 150 Arabs to become Muslims. However, when he left Mecca and went to Medina, he migrated from one to the other. He became a politician and a jihadist. And 10 years later, when he died, every Arab was a Muslim. That is to say, migration began the process of becoming political, and with politics and jihad came success to Islam. So, know this, that every Muslim is commanded in 91 verses in the Quran to emulate Muhammad in everything that he said and everything that he did. So this means that the Muslim is to imitate Muhammad, and therefore, when he enters into a new host country, a political process begins. This political process starts with, well, we're Muslims, and our religion means that we need to have special rooms for prayer, have special food, halal, whatever. There are demands that our clothing be different. Islam begins a process of pulling away from the host country and saying, we must be different because we are Muslims. Now, you need to know that every Muslim is not an individual, but actually is part of an ummah, a larger body, the community of Islam. And within this community, there are leaders. The leaders are the ones who will be the activists. It's not just every Muslim who's going to do things. The leaders do it, and you need to know this. Every member of the Ummah is commanded to obey his leaders. So this makes Islam a very powerful political bloc. So when Islam starts immigration, it starts a political process of Islamicizing the host country. This is what makes it very different from any other form of immigration.
This hour takes us to Europe, where more than 1,000 stranded for days in the Hungarian capital's main train station have left the station by foot for Austria. Now, the crowd intends to march 175 kilometers from Budapest to the border. The refugees belong to an estimated 2,000 people stuck in the railway's temporary refugee camps. Now, this came 2 days after a tense standoff between refugees and police after the asylum seekers were blocked from boarding trains to Western European countries. The refugees refused to register as asylum seekers in Hungary and insist that they be allowed to go in Germany or Austria. Refugees accuse Hungary of failing to live up to its commitments to deal with the crisis.
We don't trust police here. We don't trust government. We need somebody like UN to be here to try to solve this problem.
Hungary closed a crossing on the border with Serbia after nearly 300 refugees broke out of a refugee reception center near the town of Ruskek. Another 2,300 asylum seekers inside of the camp threatened to break through the fence of the camp. Now, the Hungarian parliament has already passed emergency anti-migration laws. The new measures include criminalizing illegal border crossing and vandalism. Hungary has recently built a razor wire fence along its southern border to curb the flux of asylum seekers. We're going to cross over to Yunus Ara, an activist out of Hebron. Thank you so much for being with us. Looking at this situation, and why do you think that we're seeing these type of actions by some European countries that actually make the situation from bad go to worse? We see these refugees that are already under so much pressure, but then when they are finally reaching some of the destinations, at least the first destination in Europe, basically they're not getting a whole lot of help, and it makes a complex situation even more complex. Why would these people now have to walk to Austria?
I think now every country's burden, everyone believes in a human rights burden to host those people and provide them the proper living conditions. But I think it's the Arabs' burden at the first place to provide these people every possible need, every possible thing they could need. Safety, food, accommodation, housing, everything. It's not, at the first place, it's the Arabs' burden. Then the allies who are now bombing Syria, it's also their burden to host those people and provide them safety and security as well, and proper living. Now, what we are seeing, what's happening now, that Syrians who are forced out from their own land at gunpoint are actually running away from death to another death instead of running away from death to safety. Now, everywhere they are going, first thing they face is death. And if they survive, if they succeed to survive, then they will have to face suppressors of the countries they have asylum to, such as in Hungary, who are obstacling every possible way for them to reach safety. And this is very inhuman, very humiliating. And I think there has to be a real stand to judge these people, to sue them, because in one hand they are attacking Syria, on the other hand they are not receiving the refugees who are running away for safety. This is very, very inhuman.
No, sir, you said that it's an Arab problem. I want to expand that aspect of what you've said a little bit. What do you think that the Arab countries should be doing that they're not doing? Because unfortunately with the Syrian situation, we see the Arab countries very much involved a lot of time and perhaps even causing a lot of this displacement to begin with. So please tell me, expand a little bit what you mean about the Arab problem and what these Arab countries should be doing.
I think what you have said is 100% correct. Now, some of the Arab countries, they have paid billions of dollars to destroy Syria and to force the Syrians, those who survive the killing, to force them out of their own country. Now, instead of spending these billions on the destruction of Syria and killing our people, Syrians are our people, and killing our people in Syria, they should pay these billions to afford good living conditions, not only for Syrians, but for every poor Arab country, for every country that is facing such destruction, such as in Iraq, Syria, Libya, Yemen, Palestine. What about Palestine? We've been facing displacement for the last 67 years. Had they paid this sum of money, these billions, to save Palestinians from what they are going through? The Arab countries, mainly those who are causing this tragedy, they should open their doors wide for these refugees, such as Gulf countries, such as, to be more specific, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who are mainly paying this money, these huge amounts of money, to destroy Syria.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Welcome back to New World Next Week. I'm James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. James, we've got a lot of breaking, developing, and fresh news.
James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. James, there have been a lot of really important things going on all around the world. I've noticed recently in the States, finally now, the European migrant crisis, much larger than that, but the migrant crisis has finally kind of hit the mainstream. And I say that because in the mainstream, and I can show you the screen grabs I took earlier, it's all emotional ploys, no context, headlines saying literally, quote, "A dead baby becomes the most tragic symbol yet of the Mediterranean refugee crisis." So I was looking for a way to kind of break this down, and I think I found kind of an easy way via a kind of rough transcript of an exchange between Press TV and the Pan-African Newswire, which I believe is based actually in Detroit, in Michigan.
No matter how much the German Chancellor says that this is an impending crisis for Europe, unless the root causes of these migrants leaving their countries and coming to European shores is not discussed, the situation cannot be resolved. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and they cannot discuss it because they're heavily implicated in the entire crisis. And the United Nations has said, and I've repeated this on several occasions, that this is the worst refugee and internally displaced persons crisis since the conclusion of World War II, some 70 years ago. So therefore, the root of the problem is that the United States and its allies within NATO have waged wars against people throughout the region. Now we see so many refugees coming from Syria because of the 4.5-year-long war that's been waged by the United States proxies inside Syria that has literally driven out millions of people from inside the country. And this is true of Libya, it's true of Nigeria, it's true of Central Asia, Afghanistan, Pakistan. So this is a crisis that was created by Washington and Wall Street.
To break it down of what the migrant crisis really is, James.
Well, yes. I mean, this is a good way of looking at it because all of the white nationalists like to talk about the white genocide that's coming and things like that without looking at the actual genocidal actions that are being committed by the military at the behest of the political puppets puppeteered by the banksters for their own purposes, destroying entire nations, bombing them to smithereens, ripping apart the fabric of their societies like in Libya, like in Syria, like in all of these other targets. Of course there's going to be floods of people escaping these countries. Of course this is the exact This is exactly what's going to happen. And of course that's going to create political turmoil in Europe. I think that's part of the plan as well. I mean, I think all of this is part of the same plan, and I think we have to understand it as such. The enemies are not these migrants. The enemies are the people who have created this situation and the people who are funding the wars that create this situation. So let's keep our eyes on the prize here. I think the real enemy continues to be the people at the very top who are pushing and pulling the strings of power to make these events possible.
What's going on in the world? What is happening? And I want to ask you this question today. Why is Islam desiring to attack Italy, for that matter? Why is Islam outside of its Arabian Peninsula? Just asking you that question. Where was Islam born? In the peninsula of what is today Saudi Arabia. I want you to be thinking about that for a moment. It's relatively new on the block, some 1,400 years ago. It follows Judaism, it follows Christianity, the Bible was intact, and then comes Islam. I want to ask you a question. I want you to be thinking. And I want you to be careful not to get your education from any news service, including Fox, CNN, and certainly not from your high school or university campus. It's absolutely a shame. So I want you to be thinking today, and I want you to be a very, very bright and educated people about what we're looking at. Mark it down in your notes, first of all, that when we hear the term or the word radical Islam, you've all heard that. I want you to know the reason why you've all heard that is because it is a uniquely Western American creation. Did you know that? Prior to the Bush administration, there was no such terminology of radical Muslim or radical Islam. Did you know that? It was invented by us, we, the West. Why? Because it felt better for us to divide a group of people based upon the talking points that we were hearing from the Muslim community. Those are radicals. Those are radicals. So we would look at the word radical. If you do really a dissection or the pathology of the origin of the word radical, its beginnings comes out of the word root. A root, or the root. For example, there's orange trees on campus. If you want to have a really, really healthy, strong orange come from an orange tree, you want to make sure that you get the vitamins down to the roots. If the roots are strong, it means it will be the most authentic orange tree producing oranges possible. Are you with me? When you go to the root, you are known to be going to the source. When you say, let's get to the root of the matter, what are you saying when you do that? We want to get to the source of the matter. Are we not saying that? Do you understand that? So when we say radical Muslim or radical Islam, what are we saying? We are saying source Islam, source Muslim. Pure Muslim, pure Islam. That's what the word means. But our administration would have you believe that, don't worry, there's a crazy fringe out there called extremists. They're not even radical Muslims. Our administration will not use the term radical Muslims or radical Islam together. Now, if you're a Muslim this morning and you're here right now, you may not agree with me publicly, but you'll have to agree with me privately. Islam is not a religion. Does that come as a shock to you? Islam has a religious aspect to it. Islam has a military aspect to it. Islam has a social aspect to it. Islam has a judicial branch to it called Sharia. Islam has an educational system of it. Islam has all of these various ribs that prop up the umbrella of a world dominated by the Arabic meaning of the word Islam. Contrary, I just saw it the other day, a spokesperson for the Council for American Islamic Relations said to the American public, light straight through her teeth, she said, the word Islam means peace. The word Islam means submit. But you know what? If we're not thinking, if we're not researching for ourselves, if we're busy watching the Kardashians and the Rams play the goats, we won't know what's going on. But we need to know the truth because listen, ladies and gentlemen, the world has changed. Under our noses, it's changed. It will never go back to being the same because the toothpaste is out of the tube. Or in this case, the jihad has gone global. This is not my opinion. And so Rome meets to gather its military forces and political leaders to figure out on Thursday night, what are they going to do about the Islamic threat that is promised to invade Rome? Why are they concerned, ladies and gentlemen? Because they've invaded Rome before. They know their history. And it's coming again. I want to ask you, think, why is it coming again? So guys, get ready to put the first video on the screen. Prepare it. I need to prepare you for what you're about to see. Number one, this was put together by Professor Bill Warner, and it is excellent. Watch it carefully. Every white dot you see appear on the screen will be a military advancement of Islamic forces. Did y'all hear what I'm saying? I just said, did y'all hear what I'm saying? Isn't Pastor Jeffers a little fireball? I've met him several times. He's only about yay-hoo big. That little guy, he is a powerful little man. And pray for me. He and I are going to be speaking on Islam in the world in Minneapolis, Minnesota pretty soon together. And he is exciting. Every dot you see appear on this map in white is the advancement of the military of Islam, the Islamic State. And then in the far, and it's going to turn red once they have a victory. Okay, on the map, you'll see this. So watch that, and at the same time, it's going to be hard for you. I'm warning you up front. On the top right-hand corner, there's going to be the dates. This is very critical. The dates of when these events take place. These are Islamic invasions. If you know your geography, tell me you don't. Tell me you know your geography. You're going to recognize these nations being invaded by Islam under jihad. The advancement of Islam to conquer the world. To establish, what's it called? A caliphate. To close the circle on the moon that's above every mosque. Okay, you with me? Put your eyes to the screens. Look in the right corner. Watch the dots. The green is the caliphate. Islamic controlled lands. The red dots are victories. The white dots are campaigns. Keep your eye on Spain and North Africa. Watch Italy, Sicily. Watch portions of Britain, including France. And this is Islam. Note the years in the right-hand corner, 800 AD, 840. The caliphate in green grows, 860. It's continued to bludgeon these nations into submission. The year 920, Spain is nearly totally consumed. By the year 1000, watch what happens. The caliphate is well established. Europe is being engulfed by Islam. The Middle East is controlled by Islam. There's a few wars that are taking place in the region of Iran. But predominantly Spain's consumed. The Middle East is taken. Israel in that region of the world. And this whole part in green is lands brought under Sharia law, controlled by the Islamic Caliphate. That is what they want to achieve in the United States. That's what they're doing in London right now with dual Sharia courts next to parliamentary law. Again, Spain's consumed. Now Algeria, Libya, Egypt consumed. It will spread to Chad, Sudan, and Niger as the caliphate expands and continues. Year 1420, before Christopher Columbus was sent out to find a new trade route to avoid the Barbary pirates and its piracy, Islam takes over much of that part of the entire region of that continent, and continents, I should say. The year 1600, Spain is completely, and Andalusia and La Habra, completely consumed by Islam. There's a little bit of a recession as there's sporadic power grab loss, breakups, but nonetheless in great control. 1760, just before the birth of America. Continued wars. The white dots are battles. The red dots are victories. Many, 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 many hundreds of battles continuing to 1880. Now the Civil War is over. The Industrial Revolution is underway. 1920, the caliphate is in power in the green, and the warlike state continues. Did you see that? We covered a time frame a moment ago from 624 AD to 1920s. You get that? All of those dots historically documented by professors of history. Muslims will not deny those victories. In fact, they'll boast about them. What was the last part that you saw? What year was it? 1920s? How many of you heard of the Crusades? Those horrible horrible crusades that actually were responsible, we are told by our president and his administration and other liberals, that are the very things that bred the Islamic uprising. That in Israel. Well, let me remind you, first of all, Israel was not even a nation in 1920. So let's remove Israel off the table. But if you go to Cal Poly, if you go to UCI and UCLA and USC, that's all you hear. The reason why the Islamic world has got their knickers in a wad is because Israel exists. Did you know that? Did you know that according to Islamic doctrine, Israel cannot continue to exist because as long as Israel exists, Allah cannot rule the world. That's why Israel's got to go. Did you know that? They got to go, or else the Quran's not true. Well, I read my Bible. Israel ain't going anywhere. That's what the Bible says. But you say, well, Pastor, I thought you just said there was no Israel at the time. That's right. Let me clarify. Before May 14, 1948, there was no Jewish state because for 2,000 years they had been conquered by Rome and then dispersed throughout all the nations of the world. It wasn't until May 14, 1948 in one day that Israel became a nation again in one day. So all of this jihad activity has nothing to do with Israel. Not according to the map you saw, but then it must be those doggone Crusades. Now granted, let me tell you something. Historically, I agree. There were people using the Crusades inside the Crusades to do mischief. There's no doubt about that. You say, well, that's your opinion. No, it's not my opinion. Before I set you up for this, I want to ask you this question. If Islam started advancing into Europe beginning in 624 AD, 624 AD, and it made its way all the way into Europe, what was Islam doing in Europe all those centuries? What were they doing there? Why were they there? When did the Crusades begin? And how many crusade battles were there anyway? You saw the map earlier. Watch this map. These are the wars of the Crusades, the Crusader Wars. Starts out in 1080, 1140. Notice the locations. Goes out to 1200, 1220, 1240, 1260 AD. End of story. You've been told that the Crusades were this horrible thing. Of course they were a horrible thing if you were Muslim. Did you see those battles? Those are historic, actual, documented crusade battles. Listen. On September 11th, 1683, for example, 1683, September 11th, the King of Poland mustered an army. They're called Crusaders in this particular 1683. And they went to war. And they launched a battle against the Muslim invaders, which is, by the way, the word Philistine means invader. Where was that battle? The Muslims suffered a humiliating defeat. So much so, Osama bin Laden was devoted to reclaiming on the calendar September 11th. September 11th, 1683, the European forces defeated the Islamic forces at the gates of Vienna. Does anybody know where Vienna is? Austria. Very good. What were the Muslims doing in Austria? If Islam's peaceful, then what were they doing in Europe? I want you to think about that for a second. The truth is that we are experiencing right now a revival in the Islamic State that began in 624 AD, and it's ebbed and flowed from time to time, but this time with a vengeance unlike the other times. The recent events that I needed to address today was what kind of a human crucifies children at the age of 2 years of age? What kind of people cage others and burn them alive in cages? The women who are being literally killed by being raped in every possible way. And if you don't like what I'm saying, why is it that this is happening and people are shouting, Allahu Akbar? Do you know what, by the way, I talked to an Islamic expert this week, just to confirm it, so I didn't try to pull a new wool over your eyes. Do you know what Allahu Akbar means? It's not God is great. Did you know this? It's not God is great. It's God is greater. Technically, it's their God is greater, Allah. Interesting statement. Greater than who? Why are they shouting this? What are they trying to convince themselves of? You see, people don't like to talk about this because it rings fear into the heart. And I want you to hear something right now. I assume that I'm speaking to Christians today. Listen, Jesus Christ died on the cross, rose again from the grave, and the grave will not contain the believer. When we die in this world, we go immediately to the Lord. If you begin to entertain fear because of these lunatics running around in their mother's shower curtain, crucifying babies, here's the deal. That is a sign of demonism. Do you understand that? No human, no matter how much you hate somebody, will do that to another human. That's demonic activity. You are living in a demonized age now, ladies and gentlemen. And their goal, they have figured something out. In fact, the Muslim Brotherhood teaches this. Muslim Brotherhood. Those of you who go to college, look up the MSA. MSA, the Muslim Student Association or the Muslim Student Assembly on your campus. They're a branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. Read their charter from 1928. A sworn statement on the internet, you can read it, vowing for the destruction of the United States of America because they cannot subdue Israel without removing America. That's why you're called the Great Satan. Did you know that? Are you an American today? Do you live here? You're called the Great Satan by Muslims. Did you know that? And you say, well, not my Muslim friends. They're very nice. I'm not saying that they're not nice. Are they root Muslims? Are they devout Muslims? If your friends are devout Muslims, they have a horrific day of reckoning coming very soon for them. They are going to have to choose between the caliphate and being a nice neighbor to you. Think of that. They have no choice, one way or the other. I'd like to side with Patrick Henry. Give me liberty or give me death. Because listen, I know where I'm going when I die. And last week, 20